A little bit of problems. Erel. For Erel, please. Thank you. Applause will help always.
Thanda rabba. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here at INSS again, and I'd like to thank you guys for hosting this, and Amos Yadlin and the crew for putting together such an impressive conference. I'm used to being in these places as an entrepreneur. Now I'm a Knesset member. I have to get used to it, so bear with me. What I wanted to speak about is actually the government policy and the Knesset policy that I see it in terms of supporting the cyber efforts both regionally and as far as Israel is concerned as a whole. Because I think that there's a rare time when you have an opportunity, when a big problem for the world becomes the big opportunity for a country in terms of economic development. So what I want to ask, and I'm always asking it in meetings with ministers, is Beersheba or the South going to be a cyber oasis, or is it going to be a cyber-mirage? Because when in Israel, and governments in general, when you embark on a new project, often what you have great photos, you have initial incentives for some companies, and you have a big splash in the beginning. And that's nice. Politicians love that. I'm learning the new language of politics. You know, as an entrepreneur, you need to build things, and as a politician, you need to talk about things. Building them could be a plus, but it's really not necessary. And what I want is to see how, as you know, yesterday I was an entrepreneur. JVP, which I founded, was the fund that created the first cyber incubator in Beersheba, and we're very proud of that direction. We're in strong partnership there with the Ben Gurion University, and we set a vision that we hope will become a big vision for the country. But what we're saying to the government, to the officials, to the mayors, to the leaders, is that having initial incentives is wonderful, and we can have a nice little place in the South. But if we want to make a major difference and use this opportunity of technology to make a big regional change and not just a point little change, we need to bring these incentives that we gave initially in a big way to the companies and to the people who are going to live in the South and are going to work in the South and are going to move to the South. And if we do that, we can have an opportunity to do something very large. If we, you know, when Rubik Danilovich, when we came to Beersheba, we actually came, I'm still talking about myself as an entrepreneur, in 2011 at the social protest. And Beersheba, for years, wanted to create a high-tech center for itself in the South. And Ehud Barak, the former prime minister, in 1999, set up the first calling for creating a big high-tech park in Beersheba. 13 years, nothing happened. And because a lot of mayors and leaders, they see something nice in one part of the world and they want it for themselves. And sometimes it's not compelling enough in the way you define it. And when we came and spoke to the people in the university, it was very clear to us that high-tech in general in Beersheba was not good enough. The point and that we needed to do was to come up with something much more specific. And the idea was cybersecurity. What we said very clearly is that if the Army and the technology units are moving to the South, and if we have such a strong university that grew from 5,000 to 20,000 students in 10 years, and if we come with a very strong set of financial incentives and focus for the country, we can create not a nice place in the South, but we can say that Beersheba could become the best in Israel and perhaps one of the best in the world in a set of technologies that people are going to measure the time to drive to Beersheba than to drive from Beersheba. And that's really the opportunity that exists right now, is to create a center of excellence which is originally based on technology, but its message is much broader for an entire region. And in order to do that, a few incentives that I'm trying to work on in the government today need to be implemented as a law, as a special law, מה שנקרא פרויקט לאומי, a national project for the South that is going to have certain incentives that any international company that wants to participate in will not have to work through the hallways of some ministry and not need to go with lawyers and accountants, but it will know exactly what it would be getting. And every person and family that would be moving to the South or working in the South will know exactly what it's getting as an incentive personally. So an incentive for companies and an incentive for individuals. And it is a concerted effort between companies that are international, Israeli, between people and the security forces that need to move to the South, and we need to incentivize them like we incentivize any civilian, and between the people in the university and the city of Beersheba. So cybersecurity in 15 years ago was like the walls of Jerusalem, was this image of firewall. It was like, the Great Wall in China. It was like the Maginot Line. And we know that all these walls through history were broken. And a new paradigm needs to be built. And the new paradigm touches individuals, smaller organizations, and the civilian market in as much as it touches the large organizations and countries and armies and security forces. And that's the big shift that occurs in the world that Israel and others, our allies, our friends, have an opportunity to bring, because the need is vast for protecting the individual and protecting the facilities which are civilian as much as they are security facilities that were so well protected in the past. What we need in order to explain to people who are not very strong in cybersecurity, I give them one image. Salt in Angelina Jolie. Remember, what you had is you had an agent inside the CIA, which people thought was a rogue agent. I don't want to ruin the movie for you. But what the agent was actually doing, it was an agent that was sitting inside that intercepted other agents that were already infiltrated in the system and were dormant for many years. If you want a new paradigm of cybersecurity and why we all need to be paranoid, it's Salt and Angelina Jolie. And if you can understand that, and if organizations can understand that, and government can understand that, we are beyond the firewall metaphor, and we are within the organization. So the enemy is already from within. It's just sleeping, and who knows when it's going to actually wake up. It's in is your money, and what we're saying today in order to bring it to people is we're asking people, is your money in your bank safe? Or is Jesse James going to ride on a horse in the modern way and take it away from you like it's done every day all over the world? Most banks hide it. You know, when you host something, I mean, the cloud is going to be, of course, the biggest element for anything, for your patient medical records, for your emails, for your anything you want to put there, and you don't know whoever it is that's keeping your data center. You want to know that there's a standard and there's a quality control standard where your data is kept, that it is going to be secure, because otherwise you're totally open. You know, your business, your energy sources, who knows what really happened on that plane in Malaysia. We know that something happened all of a sudden in the air. We know that they took a very big U-left turn. We know that instead of continuing to go north, they went south. But we don't know that that event occurred from somebody on the plane. That's a very conventional way of thinking. I would recommend to people, and I think that, and I've spoken to a few people about this, that maybe the intervention was done through a cyber attack rather than through a physical attack. And I know they're blaming the pilots, and I've looked at the tapes, and I've looked at what the pilots were doing, and I want to tell you something. It does not sound to me like the pilots were involved. There was foul play, and the foul play was either physically on board, and maybe it wasn't physically on board. In other words, if airlines and governments don't wake up to understand that there's an imminent threat, even on getting on a normal airplane, then they're going to be exposed. And I think people are beginning to realize it. So this problem is becoming much more widespread than the big enterprise software managers of the larger organizations like it was maybe 10 years ago. What you saw in the U.S. Over the holiday shopping a few months ago in Target, I mean, consumer stores, they're being breached. I mean, the major systems were put together for banks and the banking system. But today, you don't need to get into a bank to get all your information. You buy at a store. They steal your identity. I mean, Target was breached. I think it was 50,000 identities that were stolen. And, you know, and what we're going to have people coming to Israel from the J.C. Penney's and the Walmarts, and because they want to see how some of their new big problems maybe can become new opportunities for companies and solutions. But we are dedicated to helping them as well. And then what I'm saying is that for people who are involved in cybersecurity, for people who are in Israel, the problem of the world can become our business opportunity. And it's not nice to say, but it's true in the next few years, because the new solutions and the new strategies and the new ecosystems need a solution, and they can only be met with strong cooperation between, here in Israel, between the Israeli companies, between the security forces, between the international companies, and between the institutions of higher learning. And all of these elements, all of these players need to be incentivized to do it here, because otherwise they would do it elsewhere. And what do we want? What does the government need to do in order to push this opportunity in Israel forward? Well, we had financial incentives for companies that are standard, and today I think there needs to be a new paradigm. The thing that some of the companies that moved to the South recently was given as sort of a one-time deal was essentially 40% of the salary of each employee with a ceiling of 30,000 shekels, which is a much bigger ceiling that you get usually, for people who are moving and are recruited in the South. This was done to NES and to EMC, and maybe to one or two other companies that are applying for it. And when you try to ask for additional incentives, the government is saying, sorry, it's closed. What I'm trying to explain to some of the ministers, and I promise you that I'll be bringing the Science and Technology Committee with Gafni, an ultra-Orthodox at the head of it, and about 30 other Knesset members to the South just to see it. This needs to be a law that any company that moves to the South knows that it's getting without being beggars. And then you have an opportunity to bring many companies, Israelis, international. People need to make a decision where they're going today. That's one. Two, the IP. We know today that governments are resisting for American companies, for example, taking Hungary or taking different places around the world and putting their IP there if they don't have substantial development there. What we can do in Israel is we can offer a haven for the IP development for people who come and do it in Beersheba in the South, and we can give them, they'll be able to sell it if they put their IP here in Israel, anywhere in the world with tax advantages. And what I'm trying to explain, this could be critical because people are looking for real places in the world where they can get these incentives, but where they actually make the development. And then finally, the people. We need people who are living and working there in the South to get a major incentive. We need people who are moving to the South to get a major incentive tax-wise and employment-wise for the person himself or herself and for the spouse. And then what we can have is we can have not 400, 500, 700 employees. In the next 5 years, we want 5,000 employees in the technology field in Beersheba in the South. We want on every one of the technology employees 2 or 3 other employees in small businesses, in services, in social and cultural activities. 15 to 20,000 new jobs that are high quality in the South will create a game changer. I took personally 11 companies public on NASDAQ. I want to take 11 new regions in Israel public in Israel. Taking region public is getting 15, 20,000 employees that will have a new story to tell in different regions in Israel. Yes, around technology, but in a message that is much broader than just the technology. A message of renewing a region, renewing a place, and letting the young and older people, and giving them an opportunity, just like you have an opportunity in Tel Aviv, to live and create and do something there that's going to be the best in the country and maybe the best in the world. Thank you.